Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Lodgify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.
Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning, you two.
Good morning.
Hello, hello. Happy Monday.
Best day of the week.
What else? There we go. Yes.
I'm glad.
That's what I love to see.
I'm glad everyone's starting to catch on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't wait for the t-shirts. They're going to be great. They're going to be just chef's kiss. But how's your guys' weekend? You guys look great. You guys look maybe a little well rested. I don't know. What are we feeling? How are we feeling this Monday?
I went to bed at 9 p.m. yesterday. It was great.
Me
Probably.
too, but that's not abnormal. Went to a dinosaur museum with my little 4-year-old, and then a lot of swimming and neighborhood kids time. So I'm exhausted, but it was a lot of fun. He had a good time.
I'm up in the mountains again. Different background today, but same location, just a different part of the house. And we cooked a lot, and just it's been very rainy, so we sat on the porch and like played games and just hung out. So very relaxing.
Sounds like a very wholesome, moment weekend for both of you. Getting to play dinosaur museums, games out on the porch with the rain. Oh gosh.
What about you, Will?
Oh,
Don't
nothing
ask.
crazy. No.
Maybe. Okay, we'll leave it at
No,
that.
I had a good weekend. I had nothing crazy. I'm packing. I'm moving. So right after this episode, I'm going to Podcast Movement with Claire on the Hospitality FM team, and her and I are gonna spend a week at this conference, and then right after, I'm moving into the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. So
Out to the burbs.
I know I'm out of the big city. So
You're almost 30.
well, I'm a little heartbroken about it. I don't know how I feel. I went to a Sam Felt show this weekend, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna miss like doing these like in the city downtowns, nightlife stuff. But at the end of the day, it was a good time. Good time. I'm excited to move. Got lots of cool stuff ahead.
So that's what he did. He went to a Sam
Speaking
Felt
of-
concert.
I did, but I'm also moving. So it was like chill at house, pack, go to the show, come home, do it all over again. But speaking of good weekend plans, on Friday, I had the amazing opportunity to meet up with one of our amazing sponsors, aka Sojo. Marcia on the team is the head of marketing, and she lives in town. So it was great to actually meet up in person. And as her and I were talking, we're just like, man, all the operators that we either have listened to the show or that use the Sojo products are just coming off probably the peak of their busy season. And so we want to congratulate all of you operators for managing the stress and the chaos during the summer. And in a congratulations of getting through your peak season, we have a gift for you. It's called alcohol. And it's actually a wine box, which is curated wine with a partnership with Sojo and a company called In Good Taste. So what they've done is they've curated this awesome box of white wines, red wines, rosés, all the good stuff. And you can link in the show note or grab the link in the show note and then fill out the form. They'll send you a box, and voila, you'll get to try amazing good wines to kind of relax and maybe even share with the team if you're local. So want to give them a shout out because that was also a great way to start my weekend on Friday and off into the sunset. So yeah, good times. Brought to you by Sojo. All right. Go ahead, Brandon. Would you have something to say?
No, I was just gonna say, like, I love the wine box. It's probably like my favorite thing they have.
Yes, it's so good.
I'm a big
So
fan of
good.
the coffee box. Not a big wine guy, but coffee gets me through the day. So
Hey,
Amen
that's
to
my
that.
wine in your coffee mug. Wine in a coffee mug, as we saw last week, is chef's kiss as well. So
wow, you've been cooking a lot this weekend, Chef Will.
Yeah, I don't cook very much, but anyways, moving on to actual industry topics outside of our weekend plans. I would love to maybe have, let's see, I think Brandy probably has. Oh, okay, fine, Michael.
No, off to Michael can lead the way.
Yeah.
All right, Michael, take us off for our first topic and news story of the day.
So Focusrite put out some projections on OTA traveler mix through the next 3 or 4 years. And while good news for travel as a whole is trending upwards, OTA usage is pretty much flatlined from 2022 to 2026 projected. I guess there's a lot more travelers becoming savvy for booking direct. Makes sense. I mean, the majority of the time I do book direct. There's perks, there's loyalty. And, I think as more travelers catch on, we'll see this trend continue on further, unless you can become a PR and marketing guru genius like Airbnb has. And Airbnb's campaigns aren't as totally in your face, but they're really cool and hip. Like the the Barbie trend that was going on, like wildfire the past month or so, they caught on, did a fantastic job, did some joint ventures with Ashton Kutcher and Gwyneth Paltrow, opening up their houses. And those are things that get people kind of hooked in using your brand. The one other piece that I really, really like, and I'm fascinated to see how it shakes up, is the One Key program by Expedia. Mm-hmm. For anyone who's ever listened to this show, I'm an avid Delta loyalist and have lots of frequent flyer miles with them. But if you don't have that, airline Delta out of Atlanta type of program, and you're not as loyal to any one, the One Key program is fantastic. Like, you can actually get really solid perks across flights, hotels, I think car rentals as well. But that's what's going to help drive loyalty to OTAs. So I love the move. I'm fascinated. It's definitely way too early to tell if it's going to stick and hook for travelers, but it's certainly a compelling argument, and one that I think you'll see a lot of business travelers start to use.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really smart move. And, like you said, if you're in one of these areas that isn't a hub where you can pick an airline to be really dedicated to, this is a great way to still get, I feel like the whole point system has been very much like, it's becoming more mainstream. I guess like more people are hearing about it or realizing how you can like game the system. So this will give, I think, more people the ability to do that. And it's pretty, I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm surprised that Airbnb hasn't had some sort of loyalty program, considering how loyal people can be to the brand. So I wonder now if we'll see. Well, Booking has the Genius program, but it's not quite the same as Expedia's.
100%. And I'm very curious too, because if you take out maybe the OTAs, right? Like you have the big three, we'll call them Airbnb, Expedia, and Booking. I want to know if even kind of how Marriott just recently, I don't know if we covered this on the show, but when they partnered up with MGM, to license Bonvoy now. So now all the MGM properties are able to be, as a Bonvoy member, you're able to do all these perks and all this other stuff. So it's like, all right, who basically are we going to have a race? Excuse me. Are we going to have a race to the top of creating the world's most unified point system or some type of, who knows? But I think that would be a very interesting kind of race or battle to creating this type of program.
Yeah. So we've seen the commoditization of hotels. We're largely have seen the commoditization of airlines, and kudos to Southwest, until a fairly recent, I think, Hopper deal, they totally avoided all OTAs. So all of their bookings are direct, 100%. And they can offer cheaper flights because they don't have any additional spend on platforms or OTAs. So and then now with short-term rentals starting to feel more and more commoditized through Marriott Homes and Villas. We've heard rumors of Hyatt launching theirs pretty soon. Amex launched their program. So it definitely, travel is becoming more commoditized, and it's all about grabbing the eyes and the attention and getting them to book for you, with you. And you have to have some hook, loyalty to the brand, an actual loyalty program, perks. And I don't know if OTAs as they existed 2 years ago do all of that in what's coming in the future of travel. I've seen just in the past 2 weeks, 3 or 4 different companies that do various arrangements with influencers or travel influencers. It doesn't even have to be travel influencers. It could be a food influencer who's doing a pop-up retreat at a castle in England or something. And they sell their trips, flights included, through Instagram. But through Instagram, it's direct. So there are ways around the OTAs, and the OTAs are going to really have to catch up with this influencer marketing piece. Otherwise, I think that could be a huge, huge drag on OTAs in the future.
Yeah, you're seeing
also.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Will.
No worries. I was just going to say one thing on the influencer side, just because we are very close to it at Hospitality FM within not just the podcast stuff, but a lot of our podcast hosts or creators have a big following on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube and other platforms like that. And so, we're seeing even the OTAs come to us or come to some of our influencers or creators or whatever you want to call them, to work on a B2B side as well. So getting people to list on these platforms, not just Airbnb. We have one as an example was Zoe Berghoff in Booking.com. So like Zoe is promoting, hosts to then distribute their properties on Booking and it's like a trending ad, and it's been doing pretty well. So not only are they doing the B2B or not B2B, sorry, B2C, like influencer, travel and look at the lifestyle and all the perks and funness of the experience, but on the operator side as well. So it's pretty interesting to see how they're doing pretty much anything outside of the traditional realm to, again, gain inventory, but also gain user adoption.
Yeah, so if you are one of our track users, you can actually find out more about all of the new things in distribution at Next, the TravelNet conference, September 24th through 27th. You can grab that link in our show notes. And again, thank you to TravelNet for being one of our wonderful sponsors. And this is kind of the influencer topic, fits perfectly with our next topic, which enrages me deeply. So maybe there's another rant coming.
But classic Brandy rant, honestly.
Brandy rant. But so I've seen the first time I saw an article recently was in the Washington Post, but I'm sure you've seen it plenty of other places, but tourists behaving badly. And so the kind of the crux of this is that there are tourists, usually young people, like the people listed in the article are all late teens, early 20s, that are doing things like carving their initials into a like 8th century castle in Japan, or in their initials into the Colosseum in Rome or the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And it's like, destroying and damaging just national, global historical treasures and the culture, like pivotal parts of the cultures of the places that they're visiting. And there's been there was a kind of an article with local leaders in the Italian government kind of just like exasperated as to how you can control that kind of behavior. And it's kind of a catch-22 because Europe is seeing specifically a huge surge in tourism now that kind of COVID restrictions are over. But with that, if you have all these people coming, statistically, you're going to have some bad apples. But it seems like the bad apple behavior isn't so much like kids getting drunk in the red light district in Amsterdam, but it's, destroying their national treasures. And that's just abhorrent. I think if you're traveling abroad, you should have the wherewithal to not do stuff like that. And, they're arresting people, and I think they should. But I'm curious to hear your takes before, we go off.
Will, do you want to go ahead? Or you want me to? Yeah.
Go for it.
I think there's a lot of things at play here. The influencers are certainly, in many cases, setting bad examples of how to act in certain places. But there's also a difference of things that harm people versus things that don't. We've all been silly or make dumb mistakes, but they don't harm anything. One of the stories cited was a guy jumping off of a 5th-story hotel into a canal in Venice. These canals are nasty. They're probably not even that deep. He's not hurting anybody except potentially himself. And as a tourist, I would think it's kind of funny watching him jump off of this into the canal. Now, the flip side, like, I love Rome. The Colosseum is one of the most impressive things on earth. And to like feel like you have the ability to write your name into it after it's been standing for 2,000-3,000 years, totally not cool, not okay. So for me, there's a line of being respectful straight up disrespectful or just being dumb. And jumping off of a canal into Venice is dumb. Scratching your name into something that's a cultural icon is totally inappropriate. Another story they cited was from Game of Thrones, walking down the stairs in Dubrovnik, and people wanting to recreate this scene from a movie. I remember when I was in Scotland, when I was 21 maybe, we ran down this massive hill in Stirling, which is where Braveheart was from, and yelled freedom. We're young and silly and dumb, but doesn't hurt anybody, right? So people love to get upset about anything and everything these days. I think we need to pick our battles. Anyone who's traveled abroad in any country has seen people acting inappropriately or just goofy. I'll tell one more story. When I lived in Krakow, everyone always thought I was English because they didn't get a whole lot of Americans at the time. And so I asked why everyone seemed to dislike the English. And they're like, well, it's where a lot of bachelor parties come, and they are just straight up hooligans. And there was a guy that in the town square in Krakow grabbed a pigeon and like literally bit its head off, like Ozzy Osbourne style, in front of like families eating dinner in the square. Right. Like, again, there's things that are appropriate or maybe like on the verge of criminal in some cases like this. And then there's like acting silly and dumb, and just use common sense. There's a line. We all know where that line is. Don't cross it. Luckily, as the 3 Americans on this, most of these stories actually weren't Americans.
Thankfully.
It was a very pleasant surprise, because Americans do have a reputation of acting inappropriately abroad. But Will, your take? We took you to Spain for your first time to mainland Europe, and I'll just leave it there. You want to take?
I was hoping this publicly wouldn't be on the episode, but it's too late now. Look, okay, I agree with there's a fair line of silliness and harmless type stuff. Maybe for an example, seeing in TV shows and movies that when you can't get into an apartment building that has buzzers on the outside, that people just kind of hit all the buttons, right? And that seems to let them in. We couldn't get into our apartment in Barcelona, and I may have done that in a silly, goofy mood, pissing off a local who was right there. And totally, I will admit, I was an idiot. That was a stupid call. I don't do everything you see in movies. Just because it's in a movie or TV show doesn't mean you can do it. Basically, it was a lesson learned. And but biting a pigeon's head off in a Times Square with families eating dinner, I think that's a very different act. And to kind of go back into some of the stories that we're talking about, it's the kind of the point that I wanted to bring into this tourism, kind of like the titles of a lot of these articles are entitlements on the rise. Tourists are are vandals, and it's just pure vile on what they're doing. And I totally agree. And this is some of the things that I think, Michael, you mentioned how like influencers are a part of this. I don't think influencers are encouraging this type of behavior. Obviously, they bring a big amount of eyeballs into a certain destination or city. The thing that is really rough, because our friends at Rent Responsibly or other short-term rental advocates and regulators would understand that this type of behavior, this poor press that we're getting, whether it's, you know, not we as a show or a group, but, you know, the younger crowd that's, you know, harming historical artifacts. This is when it's going to crack down into regulations. This is when things are going to get harder and harder for operators. It's going to get harder and harder for, you know, people to have this ability to rent their home or rent their flat or do a type of service and experience. And that's when it's, again, going to make the small sliver or the sliver of the pie of hospitality for short-term rentals become harder and harder to continue to grow, especially after making such big strides the last 2 or 3 years. So I would say, like, this is where I get concerned, is the regulation piece with all the bad press.
Yeah, and Barcelona is actually a prime example of that, like the over tourism that happens. And you have a location that gets popularized, like you having Dubrovnik was not necessarily on the average traveler's mind recently. And then now everybody wants to go. And so you have these locations that are grappling with like, yes, we want more tourism, but we also don't have the infrastructure. And now people are, you know, kind of abusing the land or like the cities simply by there being too many people, even if they're not doing anything specifically harmful. But I think, you know, the entitlement piece is something that really resonated with me, because one of the articles was saying that, you know, the travelers are spending a lot of money, which you are, to go, even if you're traveling in the United States, if you're going across the country, it's almost like going to Europe distance wise. But so there's an entitlement of like, I have paid all this money for this, therefore I get to do whatever I want. And I mean, I see that as an operator just on like a smaller level, you know, like regardless of what they're doing, there are like no rules because they've paid to be there. And I remember I did a summer study abroad in Spain. It was like 6 weeks, and we were just kind of like drunk college idiots. We didn't really do anything like destructive, but we definitely were more intent on having a good time rather than studying. But then when a few years later, when I lived in Madrid, I would avoid, like, because obviously I'm American, I would see these like swarms of Americans, and I would just pretend I was like, I'm not American. Do not associate me with this. Like, we would go out and people, like, I think the Americans and the British together have a pretty terrible reputation of
And
like young people,
Australians.
and Australians
Yeah.
have a pretty reputation, the three of us, of just being like awful abroad. And I was like, I don't want to be associated with that. I just was so ashamed. And I carried that into when I did a 2-month trip through Colombia and Peru by myself. And I was speaking Spanish most of the time. And I just pretended like I wasn't American because I didn't want to like have people look at me that way. But then I changed my attitude about it. And I was like, so people are only seeing these loud, boisterous, drunk, disruptive groups. But then you, as a responsible traveler, can then be a better ambassador for your country. And so I might kind of changed my attitude about that. But it's just, as also like a big history nerd, it is so upsetting to see these, you know, these monuments have survived like centuries, thousands of years, wars, all sorts of things. And then some 17-year-old ruins them. I mean, it is just so messed up. And that is something that's also going to follow that person around like for a long time, possibly the rest of their life if there's like a criminal record attached to it. So it just educate your children before you send them abroad.
Yeah. The other piece of it was of these articles, the undertone was that it's getting worse and worse every year. And I'm not sure that's true. And PBS travel guru and legend Rick Steves also agrees that he's been seeing these groups for decades now, and behavior's not any different. Unfortunately, it does mean more areas get roped off or put behind glass, and you know that's ultimately what has to happen to protect the monuments or the art or whatever. I mean, you see people throwing paint on famous paintings for various reasons, but it's just disrespecting the culture that's out there. And I don't think it's necessarily the occurrence is any more frequent than in the past. I just think we all have more access to news articles from Dubrovnik or people's social media accounts from, Bali. But, at the end of the day, it spreading the behaviors and planting the ideas in people's heads is dumb. There's do you guys know the Barbara Streisand effect? Have you ever heard that? Yeah. So for our listeners, the Barbara Streisand effect is back, I don't know, 80s or 90s when her house got shown or listed somewhere online. She fought it and did everything she could to get her address and photos of her house off of the internet. But ultimately, the more she was fighting, the more fame and press she got about it, which meant more and more people knew where her house was, which meant more and more people were outside of her house all the time. So there's a bit of a don't cover it in the news, and it's more likely to go away. And I will say, and maybe Brandy, you could back this up. During COVID, it seems like there was just straight up nonstop parties in houses all the time. And when I was at NoiseAware, we had the data. It was happening 3 times more often than it was the year prior. And, there's a number of reasons that was, but it seems like now maybe all the partiers have moved to Europe, but it's not quite as bad as it once was. Is that the case?
Well, I think I would say yes, but then also kind of the switch is that Romy's product has totally changed. Like pre-COVID, we had a lot of more single family homes, and now we're mostly, full building multifamily. So it's kind of hard to throw a huge razor. You could try, and people do, but it's not quite as bad as it was before when we had single family homes. But I do think, during COVID, people wanted to party. That doesn't go away. And so they were finding ways to do it. And yeah, there is, now that international travel is opened up and the expenses aren't as different, the flights are just expensive anywhere, so you might as well go to Europe. And so I think there's more access. There definitely, I think this is a positive. There are a lot more programs in high school and college to get young people abroad, and people now know. It used to be, maybe it wasn't as popular before, but it was, now it is something that's really offered. People know that they can go see this cool place for a semester or 6 weeks or whatever. So that's becoming more popular. But Heather commented that, maybe it is entitlement, but maybe some of this is on the host not properly vetting and setting expectations. And I think that is probably a lot of it. And I also think that part of that lack of vetting is because vetting is very, very difficult depending on I think it's difficult across the board, but also depending on the size of the operator that you are. We're not going to have anything that's not on Instant Book with the type of properties that we have because, it's kind of like hotel style in a way, right? There's just a bigger volume. If you're, Robin at Moving Mountains and you have these big, beautiful houses that are going for crazy amounts a month, or a night, I would say that you're probably having a more diligent vetting process. But ours is, we're using AutoHost to vet whether it's a fake credit card or not, if they have a criminal background history. But other than that, it's kind of the way hotels do it. You're not vetting whether they're a good person or not, really. And that is difficult. I wish that it was practical to have a better way of vetting our guests, but it just isn't as realistic right now. So I do agree, Heather. I think that there is setting expectations is one thing. We have kind of it's instead of house rules, it's kind of expectations, what you can expect from us and what we expect from you. And the other reality is that people don't read. So even if we have it and you have to check a box or sign something or whatever, they're just scrolling through and clicking and no one's reading it. So if anyone has tips and tricks on how you can do that better, I would be very interested in hearing.
Well, I'm curious, a lot of this is based around, the conversation of, well, everything's so expensive. So everyone in their head is like, well, I'm paying 10 grand or X amount of dollars to be here. I have the right to be treated as royalty and I can do what I want because I'm paying for this opportunity to be be here in that entitlement mindset. Is this, dare I say it, due to price gouging? Jamie Lane might hate me saying that, but hey, if their prices are too high and it's causing entitlement because people are paying a crap ton of money in order to be at these places, I think, that's one thing. I obviously know it's not price gouging because we have to do what we do, and it's called dynamic pricing. You have to, if we just do weekly and weekend rates, we're going to go nowhere as an industry. So I get that the pricing piece is a really important thing as an operator, but if I don't know, some of these prices are pretty nuts. So I would say, if I'm paying $3,000 a night to be at some place, I would hope that there's maybe a better service around other things like that. And
it's a good point, Will. I wouldn't say price gouging. I would say price to value ratio. And if you don't feel like you're getting what you're paying for, then you do feel entitled to more. So yeah, it's a very interesting point. I think we'll see prices start to come down on flights and probably international hotels soon. But like we've seen in the US on domestic, but that is a very valid, when you pay a bunch of money and you don't feel like you're getting your money's worth, you try to get your money's worth.
Yeah.
So
100%. I get it. I feel the same way about, like, I don't want to carry it on, but anyways, I just feel people in general in public settings are becoming less and less understanding of other people's caring. Yeah, people like personal space. I'll just use the show that I went to this weekend. Like, normally most people are respectable of a little bit of a bubble when you're kind of out at a situation like people were just pushing left and right and just not. It was almost insane to the point like where me and my buddy left at 1:30 and like didn't even finish the whole show because it was like just nonstop. People did not care about any personal space or boundaries. Couples were getting shoved, like girlfriends were getting mad at their boyfriends for not standing up. It was a whole thing. So like that's a weird example compared to what we're talking about, but it's more of like, okay, that's never usually been the case. I remember, Brandy, when we were all at VRMA in Vegas, we went to the Omnia. That wasn't the situation. We had enough room. Everyone was comfortable. There was no shoving and pushing. Like, there's just, I think in general, people are caring less and less about others in public settings. So that's just my personal take. Hot take of the day.
Will's hot take.
Hot take. Any fun things this week for you guys as we're wrapping up the episode? And maybe I'll leave a little Easter egg at the end or a little hint. But what about you guys? What do you got going on this week?
I'm flying back to Miami tomorrow and then immediately flying to New Orleans. So yeah, just bouncing around the Eastern Seaboard this month. So I'm tired.
Oh, it's too good. Last week we were on a call and like Brandy just got back from New York and then you're on your way, or you got back from somewhere.
I was in New Orleans and then I was in New York and then I'm back to New Orleans. So it's hot there. If any of our kind of southern Louisiana operators, New Orleans, the heat is violent. It is crazy.
What about you, Golden? What you got going?
Same old. Nothing wild.
Building that historical storied business,
Just out here building,
Just out here building. I love it. Well, I'm about to head to a conference and also dreadedly pack and get ready to move. So the worst part about being an adult. But thank you for all of our live viewers who tuned in, commented, and of course left your own piece of thought on the show. We appreciate it and love the engagement. And get ready. Make sure if you are listening to the replay today, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, any of the days of the week, that you are tuning in extra careful next week as we have a very, very good morning, or a very special good morning hospitality announcement. There we go. Forgot a word. So I'm excited about this one. I've been probably bugging Brandy and Michael about it pretty much every day, and it's on the top of my mind. So I'm excited for this announcement. If you're listening to the replay or the live, get ready because it's going to be epic. Are you guys ready for it? Are you guys annoyed with it yet? Okay, good. Good. Awesome. Well, as always, for all of our live viewers, our replayers, listen to the audio, like and subscribe. Make sure you're tuned in, and we'll, of course, see you again next week.
Want to stop juggling spreadsheets, calendars, and a dozen apps just to run your rentals? Logify makes it easy. It's an all-in-one toolkit for hosts. Build a direct booking website, automate guest messaging, and keep all your channels in sync. Running your rental business your way has never been simpler. And for Good Morning Hospitality listeners, you can get 20% off any yearly plan with code GMH20. Just check the link in the show notes to get started today.